Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, How to Communicate Your Research Out of the Lab. My name is Samrat Kumar. I work for Euraxess. We are the organizers of today's webinar. This is our 6th edition of the Science Communication event. But for the first time, it's a virtual event due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So before we start with this very exciting webinar to make you understand what science communication is and how fun it can be, let me first introduce to you our distinguished speakers. I start with Professor Amitabh Banerjee, who should be joining us hopefully in any moment. He's from the University of Potsdam. Amitabh, are you here with us? Okay. So we're just having some technical issues with Amitabh, but he will join us in any moment. Also, I would like to welcome Professor Arnab Bhattacharya from the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. Hi, Arnab. Welcome. Dr. Mohit Kumar Jolly, Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Mohit, thanks for joining us in. And last but not least, Priyanka Das Gupta, MSc graduate from the Imperial College London and the winner of the Science Lab Edition 2017. So we have a great lineup of Science communication experts. But before we start, some of you might wonder what this webinar is really about, and in particular, what is science communication exactly? Science communication is about communicating science and building bridges between people involved in scientific research and the wider public. But it's much more than that. It's just more than communicating science. It's also involving and developing governance, science policies, understanding relationships between the public and the scientists, and creating science stories in the news media, as well as exploring how people learn about and engage with science. Science communication has grown enormously over the last 10 years, I would say globally, and is playing an important role in helping people to learn about science, to understand science issues when they hit the news, and to have a voice in debates about the roles of science. Science communication has become a very broad field of activity and research. People are working in science communication in a huge range of different activities. Some work for the government and research councils. Some train scientists to communicate different aspects of their research. Others work for science centers and spend their days doing amazing experiments in front of crowds of visitors and making science fun and accessible. Others are doing social research to understand how the public think about scientific issues. So I'm very happy speakers today who are experts in science communication and very passionate about this, and they represent the true spirit and idea behind science communication. Our first speaker is Professor Arnab Bhattacharya, as I said, from the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. Arnab is a renowned scientist working in the area of compound semiconductor optoelectronics and is a passionate science communicator. He's also the moderator and jury member of the Euraxess India Science Slam, which he will introduce to you in a very short moment. Thank you for joining, Arnab. I hand over the mic to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Samrat. Thank you, everyone. I hope you can see me. At this point on, I cannot see you. So basically, I hope you can see me. Please put it on the chat box if there's an issue with sound, etc. So today we're going to talk about the Science Slam. And a Science Slam is a very fun way of taking science out of the lab, out of wherever you're doing it, and taking it to the public, making it accessible, making it fun for everyone. And of course, while we will focus on the Science Slam, at the Science Communication Workshop, I mean, it's not every day that we're going to sing and dance about science. Most of us as scientists, most of you all, we will be presenting science to our peers. We will be writing about science, talking about science, giving seminars, lectures, etc. So the first part of this presentation is going to be a little bit more general. Of course, we will focus on the slam at the end. Now, do note my email. It's arnab@tifr.res.in. Feel free to send me an email. You can ping me on Twitter. I'll be happy to engage. With that, let's get going. And This year, of course, this is something which we've been doing many years, but it's all online. And while there is some technology that's come in the middle, the way we do it, some of the principles of communication remain the same, whether you're talking to a crowd in a room or whether it is on a screen like this. And perhaps a lot of what we are going to be saying today is just common sense. It's just common sense, but it's good to sort of repeat it once in a while. And what you're doing is you are trying to convey some aspect of your work in science, or it could be mathematics, education, technology, whatever it is. And the big problem is earlier you were doing it in a room. What you see, 2 pictures are of a science slam happening, and now this year it's all going to be online. And in an online format, you really cannot see and engage with an audience like you would if they were sitting in front of you. You can easily see who is laughing. You can easily see that this person has understood your joke. This person is, sleeping. You can figure it out. But it's much more difficult in an online audience. So we will try and address this aspect as well. So in case your connection breaks down, in case my connection breaks down, in case something happens, I thought, let me first tell you the summary of the story. The summary is, no matter what you're communicating, no matter when, where, and how, the most important thing is to understand why are you communicating with science, right? It may be the same thing you were talking about. You may be talking about it at a thesis seminar. You may be talking about it at an international conference presenting your results. You may be talking about at a science slam. And the purpose of this communication is different, though it's the same idea. The second thing is structure. None of us, we are humans. We don't like to listen to science. We like to listen to stories. And no matter what it is, you must build a story. The most important thing is a logically compelling story. I will explain what this is. And for this, everything else that you have, slides and other things, they are all supplementary materials. And finally, the third important thing is style. And especially when you're speaking, what matters is that your own passion and enthusiasm have to come out. And that's the key thing, right? For writing, of course, it depends. It's very, very different depending on it, whether you're writing a journal article, whether you're writing something for the newspaper, whether you're writing your PhD thesis. That's going to be very different. Okay, so that's the summary. But now let's get into the details. Why do we want to present scientific results, and how do we want to present scientific results? That's one of the key aspects that you need to always worry about. How are you going to do it? The format, is it written or is it going to be spoken or oral? One thing which we always forget as practicing scientists is we like to go to the details of the work we've done. But often we forget that the audience really knows everything what we are doing. And what you need to do is also ensure that you have the big picture. Okay? And I just lost my presentation.
We can still see it or not, though.
Okay, I've done something and I can't see it. Okay, okay, I've got it back now. I just pressed something. Okay, I've got it back. No, I don't have it back. Okay, do you? Okay, yeah, I think it's back on. Okay, so is it? And in the big picture, there are many things. There are 6 questions I would like you to always remember when you ask yourself. And ask yourself this: whether you're writing a paper, whether you're giving a talk, whatever is it accurate? Is it complete? Is there something I'm missing out? Is the sequence the story that I've told, is it logical? Is it clear? Am I making a compelling argument for whatever I'm presenting? And finally, is it needed? Is there something which I could drop without the story being compromised? Okay, a shorter story is always better. And then you will obviously fine tune it. You go through this process of keep polishing it, refining it, going back, changing it. You get comments from people. You do this all the time. And there are many, many, many common pitfalls that you have to worry about. And then you need to really bother about this. And we need to worry about this. We need to, I think, because you can't do science anymore by yourself. Right? You can sit in a lab and do some science, but then nobody cares about that. You have to be able to talk to people. You need to convey what you're doing in whether it's a theorist, right? You're solving something or you're experimenting. You have to convey your research to people. And there are many ways you can do it. There are formal ways of writing. There are reports, letters, thesis, etc. There are conferences where you speak about things. There are group meetings within your group. There could be one-on-one discussions with the collaborator. You might be giving a job talk. So many different ways of conveying your science. That's formal and also informal. And today you could be writing on a blog. You could be doing a podcast on the radio. You could be making a video for YouTube. There are many, many formats, including the Science Slam. And today, our focus is going to be on spoken science communication because that's what we do most often. We give scientific talks. Okay. Now, writing, I will cover writing in just one slide. The key thing in writing is that you don't know who is reading your paper. And the unknown reader does not give you feedback. Once your paper is out there and somebody reads it, that person generally doesn't give you feedback on your writing. On the other hand, you want maximum number of people to read your paper and even better cite your paper. And the more friendlier your writing is, the easier your style, the more readable it is, the more people will want to read it and cite it. And my experience has been all this, you know, if your professor tells you, why are you doing the Science Slam? This is all fun and dance and everything. No, it's not. All these informal presentations eventually help you become a better communicator and even write better. So it is important. Okay, so before we get started, I should have put this up initially. Samrat has already told you a bit. I am a scientist, I'm a science communicator, and I also like to tinker and develop low-cost tools. And I run something called Chai and Why. Do look it up. And I've been involved with this thing for now 6 years. And the science communication workshop is something which goes actually beyond the slam. And it has always started with one of my sort of presentations. It's more like a performance. It's very difficult to do this on a video format like this online, but still, let me try and give you the summary of this thing, which is called the bad talk. You can always Google it and find out. In fact, somebody has actually made a video and put it online. So if you look at tinyurls.com/bad talk, you can find one of my old editions of this. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you about how to give a bad talk. Now, it's very difficult to say how to give a very good talk is hard. But there are some very easy rules. There are actually 10 commandments of how you can mess things up. And this is again not mine. I stole it from David Patterson. I heard it when I was a grad student, and I have been recycling this year after year after year. Okay, this is the problem with technology. Somalia, do you know what I would have done? This seems a bit weird. Hang on. Let me just see what. Okay, all right, we're back. See, just remember that in an online format, and this technology is always, you got to be very careful. Things can get messed up all the time. So be very, very careful and test things out beforehand. Test out all the buttons, what they are. This is a new software where I don't know what I better not touch too many things because I don't know about it. Anyway, so I'm going to go through this and then tell you some useful tips before we get to the Science Slam part. So let's ask you all this. Have you ever been in a situation like this where you're trapped in a poorly ventilated room? The only source of light is an out of focus projection screen. The speaker has been going on and on and on and on and on, and there are bullets flying across the screen, various colors, and you're just totally out. And you want to escape, but the coffee break is still an hour again. You really want to shut up and stand up and yell and say, "Shut up! I've had enough of this." Do you know one word for this? One word to describe this thing, and all of us have experienced this. Whether it is in lectures, whether it is in conferences, we experience this. And this can be summarized in one word. And that one word is PowerPointlessness. Right? Einstein said that technology has exceeded our humanity, and don't let this happen to you. So, commandment number 1 to mess up your talk is thou shalt not be neat. And these are exactly the commandments as they were in the original. Of course, they have been modified now. The original was 30 years ago when there was no PowerPoint. There was slides, transparency slides. So it's a little bit based on that. But believe me, the principles are the same. So thou shalt not be neat. Why do you want to waste time preparing slides? Who cares what the audience thinks? Related to that is thou shalt not waste space. In those days, you had to buy plastic transparency, the right of them. So you wanted to squeeze as much as you can. And, you can save some money by doing this. Now we have PowerPoint. But people still squeeze everything on one slide. People still squeeze. I mean, here, this is so difficult to read. Now here, look at this one. Somebody has actually taken the trouble to cut 2 images from a paper. They could have easily put it on 2 slides. In PowerPoint, it doesn't cost extra if you have 2 slides. But no, we will make it small and put it on one slide. We shall save space. Thou shalt not covet brevity, which means that Don't write in bullet points. Always use complete sentences. Remember, by the way, remember this is all sarcastic. Yeah. Use whole paragraphs. Read every word. And this happens at talks given by the famous people, by students. Everybody does this. In fact, I've hidden the name because these are very people in the highest levels of the scientific structure in India. You see, you have all text and people read the text out. Okay, and just remember, this is like it's like almost 3:30 in the afternoon. You've had a heavy lunch. You're in a dark room. There's a slide like this. You can imagine what people will do. Okay, so do not. This is what happens when you put too much text on a slide. The fourth one doesn't happen so much in terms of PowerPoint anymore because it was thou shalt cover thy naked slides. In earlier when people used transparencies, the only way you could do animation or show points one by one was to cover your transparency with a sheet of paper and move it down slowly, and those were called overlays. But anyway, this doesn't happen so much these days. Number 5 is something that is always true, always works. Thou shalt not write large. Be humble, use a small font, and especially in India, the important people sit in front. Who cares about those students at the back, right? It's okay if they can't read. Here you go, examples. By the way, all these examples are stolen from talks given in TIFR. Scientists, they love to tell their work to people. You go up to them and say, so sir, that was a fantastic talk. I really loved your presentation. Can I have a copy of it? Oh, they are so happy to give you a copy of their slides. They don't know that I'm going to use it for a bad talk next year. And the big shots, but they don't even give their own talks. They have somebody else managing the laptop or the computer. They just leave it there. You copy it. You come and copy it the next day. Anyway, here you see, you can easily see everything that's written on this slide. Thou shalt not use color. Why do you want to use color? That means this is not an art competition. This is science. Well, sometimes it can be interesting. People use color in all sorts of ways. You've got to be very careful with color. Here you go. Color. In the good old days, we used to have transparency pens of different colors. So we wrote different lines in different colors. So now people write every bullet point in a different color. This is again, I'm hiding, I have blanked out the name because this is again at the highest levels of the scientific hierarchy in India. Thou shalt not use color. Of course, color for your text and background and all is important. This is such a very nice combination for readability. You see this very nice shading of the waves in the water at the back and bright yellow and red. This looks so nice. Ooh. Sometimes something which can look good on your screen. I mean, this, if you're watching on a screen, you can probably still read it. Believe me, on a projector, this is almost unreadable. On the other hand, you can do things like this. Remember, the cool thing is at the bottom of the slide where the yellow dots denote the ring critical points. I have shown this so many times on a big screen. Again, on a computer screen, this is fine. But when you project it on a screen, you often just completely, these yellow dots disappear because they're too bright. So, choosing your colors, you have to do it carefully. Point number 7, thou shalt not illustrate. And Patterson, who wrote this, he was a computer scientist, so he compared Confucius, who said a picture is 10,000 words, but Dijkstra, who's some programming guru, said you don't need pictures, they're for weak minds. Okay, so what do you do? Instead of showing pictures, you show detailed tables of data, and this is what so many people do. They show tables of data. Isn't it obvious what is happening in this? It is so obvious when you see tables of data like this. Whereas the same thing can be presented as a graph where you can actually see some trends, something like this. No, but we will present data. That's what we do. Tables of data. That's the best way, to give a bad talk. And this illustrations, of course, sometimes can go too far. And here is one. Again, I'm from TIFR, part of our department, so I should really, this is again high-level people. When I look at a slide like this, I wonder, where do I start? Where do I start looking at this? I mean, it is like, okay, that's interesting. Okay, now this is going to be very difficult, especially in an online audience. Thou shalt not make eye contact. It's actually, sometimes people are so scared of looking at anybody in the audience. They just look at their laptop or look at their notes or look at the board, they don't look at the people. Well, that's the best way. I won't be scared. I don't know what they're doing. Don't make eye contact. Unfortunately, it's true in the online thing. I cannot see you all, but well. The last two. Thou shalt not skip slides in a long talk. Well, they gave you only 15 minutes. Well, you were happy to talk for 45 minutes. I made 50 plus slides. So let me show all of them. Oh, okay. And here is this X-ray diffraction result. Next. Here is this result. Before I can even see what you put there, next. Okay. I mean, people just keep doing this. They just insist on showing every slide they have. And those were the first 9. The 10th is the most important. You can break all these 9 and still give a bad talk if you do not practice. Thou shalt not practice. The last one. Why waste research time practicing a talk? Right? How can I make all these spontaneous mistakes and goof ups and all this if I practice? So these were the 10 commandments, and believe me, they work. They have guaranteed results. When you do it, you will actually get reactions like this. There might be people who are sleeping. Other people are, nowadays everybody has a mobile with them, so they could be checking WhatsApp. People are commenting on the colors of your slide and praying that it's over, etc., etc. But wait, this is not what we want to do. We want to give good talks. We want to actually do this. We want to change this. We want to change this so that people actually engage with you. People say, good. I never thought of this. Hey, I'd like to know more about this. Maybe I should go and ask her. Maybe this is interesting. I might even join this group for a PhD. This sounds very exciting. How do you engage your audience? And that's what we're going to do. And all of us are, of course, very busy. We will not be thinking about how to give talks, etc. till it's one day before, or sometimes maybe 2 days before if you're really starting early. So what do? And this is where I come back to my main thing. Understand the strategy. Understand why do you want to communicate this. That's the main thing. Okay. If you understand why, if I am giving a job talk, I want the person to hire me. If I'm giving a thesis seminar, those people are evaluating me. I want them to understand that I've done a lot of research and I need to pass. Okay. If I'm giving the talk at a conference, I want people to believe that we have some really cool results. Maybe I'm seeking some collaboration. So it's the same material, but maybe a different purpose. As I said in the beginning, structure is very important. We are humans. We don't like to be listening to data. We like to be listening to stories. And all of us, when we were kids, listen to stories. Just imagine when you were a small child, your parents, brothers, sisters, grandparents, whatever, family, somebody, friends, they told you stories. And the story which was good, the story which you remember, was one which is a logically compelling story. There is a cave and the lion comes out of the cave. You automatically want to know what happens next, right? You want to know what is coming in the story. If you can do that for your scientific talk, you are set. The audience is with you. They want to know what is coming next. And for that, you need the proper organization in your slides and everything else. And if you're giving a talk, the style is what I call controlled enthusiasm. That's what you need, right? Remember, you're giving a scientific talk. You are not a robot who is standing there and saying that in my lab, I had done this experiment and this experiment worked very well, for which we got these results. And I am now going to present to you my data of the last 2 months where I did this experiment. If you speak like that, nobody will be listening to you. They will all fall asleep within the next 2 minutes. On the other hand, this is not a political speech where you are going to, say that, yeah, I did this experiment and this was so cool. It's difficult to do this without an audience. It's very difficult. Look at a camera and do this. Anyway, I hope you get it. That's the difference between what I call controlled enthusiasm. You're not a block of wood. Okay. On the other hand, for a science slam, you might actually want to be singing and dancing. We'll come to that. One thing which is always good to do is figure out the important parts of your message that you want to give. There are some things that you must say. Whether I have 1 minute or whether I have 5 minutes or whether I have 10 minutes, these are the things that I must say. Okay. And there are some things which I would like to say. It's okay if I don't say them. I would like to say them. If there's the time available, I'd like to say them. And there are some things which I will not say. I will not say because, well, maybe I don't understand it very well. If I talk about it, I might get diverted into something and never come to my main point. So you must figure this out. It's always good to write these 3 things in separate groups and you ensure that your must say part is going to be covered. Okay? Now, just remember your audience. Okay. And most of us will give talks in conferences. So this is mainly for conferences, but it's also for science slams and everything else. The audience is often tired. They may be listening to many talks before yours. Your audience can read. They can read whatever comes on screen much before you say it. Okay. In many times in a conference, the abstract is submitted beforehand. People may have read it, but don't assume they've read everything. They are thinking, why should I listen to this? Okay, there are so many other things. I can check my email. I haven't checked my email in the last 1 hour. Let me check it. Okay, and if they are not experts and you have not grabbed their attention in the first 2 minutes, they will just do something else, sleep. Okay, experts, well, 5 minutes they'll give you, but in the first 5 minutes, if you haven't got the experts, they'll also go off. Which means the beginning is very, very, very important. The beginning is very important. Okay, so the first 2 minutes, if you plan this well, your talk goes well. Okay, and remember that before you have started, people have already evaluated you, people are already examining you for various things. You know, the earlier speaker may have been very boring, so they are already bored. That's a different response. Or the earlier speaker was very exciting, and now they're wondering, okay, what is this person going to do next? Okay, they are looking at what template do you have. Are you using, this is one of those standard, PPT templates, or have you got something interesting? They are looking how busy is your first slide. Do you have like some 20 different pictures on it? Okay, they're looking, are you fumbling with your mic, right? Are you taking a laser pointer and trying to shine it in everybody's eyes, or is your hand shaking? Okay, they're looking how confident do you look. Okay, various things. You holding a bottle of water and trying to do something. If you need water, please drink water. Be prepared for your talk. Now, one thing which I would really, really recommend is never ever read the title of your talk or your paper, whatever it is, because it's there. When you read it, it doesn't help. Paraphrase it. Paraphrase it. I'll give you an example. I work in lasers. Okay, so if my talk is about monolithic phase-locked arrays of anti-guided diode lasers, what is that? Today, I'm going to give you a talk on monolithic phase-locked arrays of anti-guided diode lasers. That didn't make sense. On the other hand, if I say, well, you've all used diode lasers. You want to get more power from it. How do you make high-power lasers? You take lots of lasers and bring them together. And I'll show you a way which is called anti-guiding, in which we can couple lots of these lasers and get higher powers. I have effectively said what I'm going to talk about, but in a different language. And that really helps. It helps you connect with the audience. And often what I do even today is I write things down with a pen and a paper or pencil or whatever and say, this is what I'm going to say in the first minute. I do not mug it up. Please do not mug it up. I write it. Then you realize that, oh, I was supposed to say monolithic and I forgot about it. Right now I forgot. I didn't say that. Oh, I better say that. I remember this. Okay. And, then I tear it up and throw it away, but I know what I will talk about. And don't, if you've done something cool, whatever your result is, talk about it. Don't keep it for the end because somebody might have fallen asleep or they might have gone away or whatever it is. Okay. Don't cover everything. Don't cover everything that you've done. Get a few results which are good and talk about them. Keep it short and simple. If you finish your talk 1 minute before time, nobody will feel bad. If you go 1 minute beyond your time, everybody will look at their watch and say, yeah, he's taking more time. Okay. And so take a few things, tell them what you're going to tell them, and remind them that this is what I told you. So it goes in their head. Okay. Now, the most common talk you will give in life is about a 20-minute talk where you have done some experiments or done some calculations or whatever, you're reporting results. And for that, here is my sort of template for a talk like this. You have of course, you need an opening slide. The next slide, it's often a very good idea to give a summary of your talk. The one, little abstract, one cool image, whatever you have, saying that this is going to be what the talk is about today. And don't give an outline for a very short talk. You don't really need it. What you need is this background, this big picture. Many times, especially at conferences, there might be people who are not in your field. It's good to tell them, why is it important that I'm working on this problem? Okay. Don't spend too much time on details of methods, etc., because unless the talk is on developing a method, because that people can read about. Spend most of your time on the key results. That's going to be the main part of the talk. And typically, if you have an n-minute talk, you can't have more than n slides. That's a good rule. At the end, you will summarize, of course, and then you have a carefully chosen thank you slide. I will come to this. And it's always good to have backup slides. You may actually intentionally choose to have a backup slide, which is not counted in your talk total, because there will be questions and it looks very good when you have something ready to answer that question. Okay. All right. Thank you. Most talks end like this. In fact, most talks don't end like this. Most talks end like this, with a thank you, with some fancy font and flowers, etc. This is a terrible waste. Okay. Remember, never end with a slide like that, because at the end of your talk, that slide remains on screen until somebody asks you a question. So you're getting free publicity for that amount of time. So use your last slide to have a little short summary, at least give you a website, conclusion, something, some cool result. Don't end with the acknowledgements. Acknowledgement necessary, but you can put it one before. Encourage question answers using this slide. Do something with this slide. Don't just have just an image or a thank you. Okay. And now, of course, in the modern era, Patterson gave 7 other commandments, which is don't use all colors, which we've seen. Don't consort with clip art. Don't use this Microsoft's clip art. Don't make text fly. This crazy animations of text coming in from all sides is terrible. Don't read off the screen. Don't assume your audience has 20/20 vision. This is about very small fonts. Don't put thy faith in machines, which means test everything. The last one is probably the most not so easy understood. Thou shalt not fear darkness. Now, one thing which people don't realize, and this is not so much for an online or talk or a virtual audience, but if you have a real audience, you want people to focus with you. If you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, if I press B, the screen blanks off. I press any key, it comes back. Now, if I really want people to look at me and not the projector screen, the best thing to do is to press B. Don't fear darkness. Make your screen dark. People will automatically look at you. Then you can talk. Okay. Now, something which is especially very important for online presentations is the choice of your font. Now, books are written in what are called serif fonts, things like Times New Roman and things like this. They're not good for presentations. For presentations, always use a simple font, what is called a sans serif font, like Arial, Verdana, etc. Now, if it is an online thing, which most people are going to look on either a laptop screen or a mobile phone screen, there are some fonts which are sort of very clean fonts, specially designed for online presentations. So things like Sego UI, which comes in very, it has some bold and light versions of it. There's Roboto. These are modern fonts which are very clean and nice fonts for online presentations. Please make sure the lettering is large so that people can read it, because just remember, people are often reading on a very small screen. So keep your lettering larger than usual. Okay. Just make sure the color you choose is such that it's good contrast and it's not distracting or annoying. Okay. The choice of color and contrast is important. Don't put stuff that you say, oh, I know you can't read it, but here it is. If you can't read it, why are you showing it to me? So make sure that whatever you show is readable. Okay. This is one of my pet problems with graphs. People show me so many graphs, and this is one of my real problems. If you have to show graphs, make sure you always label your axis. Okay, always label your axis. All right, that's a joke. Now, animations, and this is going to be very difficult. I don't know if my bandwidth is going to allow this, but animations are terrible. People use too much of animations. You can use it once. Don't make text fly like this. Use appear. It's not the default option. There is a simple option called appear, and that is what you can use. Appear works very well, and just use it once. Please do not do all the zooming, etc. Especially on an online platform, if bandwidth is poor, it's very difficult. So don't do this. Okay, don't do all this. Okay. Minimize animations for online presentations. That's your rule. Okay. Remember Murphy's law, things might go wrong. Always test things beforehand and make sure that even if the PowerPoint crashes, you can at least talk to the audience. Okay. Always spell check. There are too many spelling mistakes. Now, of course, software will correct it. They'll give you a red line. But always check it manually, because sometimes they will put chemical equations. If you have, it might think that's a mistake. So don't blindly believe in spell check, but always check your spellings. Always check that. It's very irritating to see spelling mistakes. Okay. Now, one important thing is, my tips, always have a connecting statement between slides. It's very important. It's good to go from one slide to the other with a connecting statement. Okay, you see this data, but looking at this, you might wonder, how did I get this? And then come to the next point. This I'll show you. Once in a while, take a gap. Make sure you can, look at your audience, think, are they understanding? Take a deep breath, smile, whatever else. Now, this is a webinar, but if it was just an online talk, I would keep asking, are there questions? Please put it on the chat. Do something like this. If you can, put a personal touch, something funny, etc. in your thing, right? And always practice and time your talk so you know how long it's going to take. Now, one thing which I've added, which is for online presentation, just remember that today's world, most people are watching it on a very small screen like this. It is better to use the 16:9 widescreen format, okay? But do not fill the slide. Do not fill the slide. Keep the right-hand part of the slide free, because in most of these video conferencing software, that's where the video of the speaker and everything else goes there. Okay, their chat box and all that is going to be on the right side. So keep the right side of your screen free. Okay, use these clean fonts. Minimize animations. In fact, sometimes I would suggest use a PDF and not a PPT. Number your slides. It's easier to get feedback. Audience can at least tell you, look, I think in slide 53, I want to ask you this question. And periodically just check with the audience. Am I going too fast? Do you have a question? Can you hear me? Check all this. Okay. All the best. And let's move to the slam. A science slam is short. It is engaging. It is fun. It is supposed to be wow. Okay, that's the thing you want to get there. Now remember, you have 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a long time when you're live, but it's a very short time because there's no chance for corrections. Okay, it's not a talk. Please remember, it's not a talk. Okay, your opening is vital. This evaluation when you come on stage is very important. Choose a short title or something which will, make the audience curious. Remember, in the Euraxess Science Slam, it's the audience that is judging you, not the experts. And there are 4 criteria. They're going to look at, did they understand it? How is it, how understandable was it? How was it structured? The structure is very important. How was it entertaining and creative? Okay, these are the questions. Keep them at the back of your mind when you prepare. And now, you'll probably have to initially submit a video, right? And then there'll be a final. But don't just give a PowerPoint. It's a live event. You are live. You can sing, dance, jump, whatever you want to do. Do an experiment. Show the excitement. But don't forget the science. The science is really important. Don't make it a Bollywood item number. And remember, what is your key message? How will you capture the audience attention to make sure they will listen to you? How will you convince them this is very interesting? How will you know that they are listening, especially in this online format? What are you going to ask them? Are you going to ask them, can you make it interactive? It's very difficult in this. And you can make it funny. You can make it a little sort of, you can say things which you will not say. It's informal. You can say things you will not say in a formal lecture. And remember, people will ask you all sorts of crazy questions, so be prepared. Okay. Handling questions is an art, right? Sometimes people will ask you an honest question because they didn't understand. But many times people have understood it. They just want to show off their knowledge, and that's why they're asking you. Some people don't even care of an answer. They just want to do some blah, blah. Some people can be a complete wrong number. They may ask you something totally different. They may intentionally want to make fun of you and ask you something. Everybody has a right to ask a question. All questions are fair. Your response says a lot. And never say, if somebody asks you a question and you don't know, say, I don't know. If you say, I don't know, that's the end. We can't continue a conversation. Don't lie. Don't say, I know this. If you don't know, say, I don't know, but. And then tell them something you know. So never, I don't know. It's, I don't know, but. I don't know, but. And then tell them something, but that allows the conversation to keep going. And that's what you want to do. Okay. How do you prepare for a slam? The best thing is you watch previous slams. They're all on YouTube. Watch the slams across, Euraxess India, Brazil, Europe, US. Watch all these slams. Watch TED Talks. If you want to get some ideas for humor, read PhD comics, XKCD, etc. But the most important thing is don't try and be some other person. Be yourself. Just be yourself. Not everybody is going to be a stand-up comedian. Finally, we are talking about science. And it's practice. The more you practice, the more confident you will be for the final presentation stage. Okay. All right. So I think I'm going to stop at this given the time, and we will take it from here. I think I'm going to sort of stop my screen share. Yeah, thank you so much for stopping the screen share. And I'm happy to take questions. If there are questions right now, are we doing questions at the end? Whatever it is, something. And just remember, you can always put questions on your chat. You can always send me a message later on, and I'll be happy to take it.
Thank you so much, Arnab. Fascinating as always, and you really nailed it with your presentation. How not to do a bad talk. I think this was really, again, very good a reminder for myself, but I'm sure the audience really has full of praises for you. What we saw in the chat box so far, they loved your slides. I will just take a few minutes for giving some more details about the Science Slam, which you already have introduced so well to us. So are you able to see my screen? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So as Arnab already mentioned, we are also organizing this year the Euraxess India Science Slam 2020. this is a step for you for an international career to participate in the international competition. The first prize is a round-trip ticket to Europe to visit a research institute of your choice. The deadline is October 4th. So gear up, go to the Euraxess India website. As Arnab said, check the Science Slam page, check the different slams of the last years, the performances, get inspired and participate, and show the world that science is more than only sitting in the lab. It's all about being funny and engaging. Here you see our winners of the last 2 years. We have Sayani Das from the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. She won the Science Slam in 2019. And in 2018, we have had the winner, Prabhahan Chakraborty from NCBS, Bangalore. So these are the two examples of people who made it to the finals and won the competition. And you can see their performances, their video submissions, and their live performances also on our social media channels and the YouTube channel. So please go to india.euraxess.org, go to the Science Slam page, find all the information, the terms and conditions, how to participate, and join this exciting event. And of course, join our community by registering at india.euraxess.org. Thank you so much for this. Now I have the great pleasure to welcome our next speaker, which is Professor Amitabh Banerjee from the University of Potsdam in Germany. Amitabh is a professor of chemistry education, and Amitabh is a slammer himself. He has won several Science Slam competitions in Germany. And Amitabh, you will tell us today now how to do a good Science Slam, right? Your voice is not audible. I think you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, very good. Loud and clear, Amitabh.
Good evening to India. I'm here in Germany, and I'm really relaxed that now everything is working. We had a lot of tech issues, but you can see me and you can hear me right now, right? Okay. So thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to give here a small input about how to do good Science Slam. I'm not sure if I'm the one who should talk about this. The last Science Slam I did is like a couple of years ago. Just 1 second. Arnab already talked a lot about what not to do during a Science Slam or a good presentation, which is if you invert every statement, you will know what to do. So actually, I have nothing to say anymore. But let me just start with introducing myself. My name is Amitabh Banerjee. It is an Indian name, but maybe you can hear it already. I did not grow up in India. I was born in India, but since I was 4 years old, I live in Germany, in Berlin. And my educational background is I'm a teacher for chemistry and informatics. And after that, I did my PhD in chemistry education. That was in 2012. And after that, I joined the postdoc session, and then I become junior professor, which is assistant professor for chemistry education in Cologne. And since now 1.5 years, or almost 1.5 years, I'm here in Potsdam, having the chair for chemistry education at the University of Potsdam. So I have 3 research interests. The first one thing is what's called curriculum innovation, which is actually the transfer of current science findings into the classroom. So that's why my background is science and chemistry education. And the second focus lies on digitalization in science lessons. So how to use smartphones, tablets, all the digital tools which we have to teach and to learn chemistry. Yes, and science communication is something I more do like a hobby, and I was myself a former slammer. I think my last Science Slam was, the last Science Slam was in the Pretty Theater with Arnab, actually. I visited him 2017, I think it was, 3 years back almost. And that was really a nice opportunity, but actually Science Slam is as far as I know, something for the young people. I'm not that young anymore. You can see my white hair on my head. There's not so much hair like Anna, but yeah. So let me start telling you something about a science slam. So my idea, actually, I had no time to prepare because Anna's request to join the webinar I got 2 weeks ago, almost, or 3 weeks, and then I went to vacation 2 weeks. So I had actually, and I'm just back from my vacation, and so let's do it spontaneously. This is also something you should learn. You have to improvise a lot when you are on the stage because not always things will work out as you have planned. So try to be spontaneous. Try to be natural and authentic. So this is my message. So what I now am going to do is I will show you my own science slam from a couple of years ago. Of course, I'm not able to do it properly as I would do it on a stage because now we have this obscure scenario with web conferences and everything. But I think you will hopefully get the message. And the first thing I would like to start with is you need a powerful introduction into your slam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I do it by sharing. I'm not actually sharing my screen. I've found a workaround. I've just a tablet and I will show you. Can you see is this clear to see the picture here? Maybe I will turn off the light, then the reflection is not that much. No, I think it was better with the light. Okay, so this is just a scene from an opening scene from a former science slam. So this is a video of myself. Just to show you the introduction, I hope I will turn up the sound so you can also hear something, and we are having a look onto that. Okay, I'm stopping here. So the talk is in German, so I just skipped here. But Anna, could you see anything on the screen, or could you get the message? Just nod if you. It was difficult, I think. Yeah, it's.
I think it's a little unclear. But the idea is you can just tell people how you dance and come in.
Yeah. So I dance, but as Anna told you, nothing is forbidden. So you may dance on the stage. My idea was I wanted to actually my first idea was not to dance on the stage. What I was talking about LEDs. So this is the topic of my talk, organic LEDs, and you couldn't see it because there was some reflections. I wore this t-shirt. This is a t-shirt having LEDs on it, and you may know these kind of t-shirts. And when you start to dance and to the music, the LEDs will just light up. So there was a connection between what I was doing on the stage, the entertainment part, and what I was going to talk about later. So this is something I want to give you as a message. You can do some entertainment, you can do some dancing, some singing, some rhymes. It is even better if you can bring it to a connection to what you are going to tell them later on. So let me continue with my slam. So I think these slides, maybe you can see them better. So this is the main slide of my, let me try one thing. I try to share my screen. I have to just allow it. Okay. Oh, he is telling me that I need to rejoin the session. Just 1 second, because I think it is better when if I share my screen. I'm back in 1 second.
It was really nice hearing your talk, Arnab, by the way.
So Amitabh just has to restart. But we have a good news. We have his. I found his YouTube on YouTube. I found his slam with the fantastic plastic. So we're gonna share it in the chat box with all of you, so you can have a look at it later on. After the webinar, you can see Amitabh's fantastic plastic slam.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Amitabh, with your screen.
And you can also see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I think you see my whole screen, right? But this is okay. So can you see the slides with fantastic plastic and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is my main slide, and I tried to keep it very simple. You can see there are two sections. One is this molecule, and one is this, mysterious looking thing with 3 spots. So my idea was to give the audience just a preview of what is coming up next. So this is actually the organic LED, which I'm gonna talking about now. And this is a molecule which becomes, or which you will get to know better later on in my slam. And I used just these 2 elements as main placeholders for my content, which I'm going to show now as next. And maybe you have already seen I'm not using PowerPoint. I'm using something which is called, I just need to move you guys here to the right side of the screen so that I can see your faces. I hated to talk and without seeing the emotion of the audience. This is something I'm not getting used to. Okay, so I was going to tell you that I'm using Prezi, or a Prezi, it's called in English, Prezi, which is a tool. I think many of you know it, but just it is not a linear tool like or presentation tool like PowerPoint. It is more like you have big mind map, and you zoom in and zoom out into different parts of your presentation. So for specific talks, it may be the better presentation software, but it is absolutely okay if you go for PowerPoint or some like Keynote or anything else. So let me continue with the talk. So the next thing on the left side here where the molecule is depicted, this is the first part of my lecture where I introduce the audience to what I'm going to, so what my background is and what was the aim of my PhD thesis. So this talk is about my PhD thesis. So first of all, I want to tell them organic LEDs. I think everybody had heard about OLEDs, but what is the big advantage or what is so innovative with OLEDs? So I'm showing them this small little video where you can see a bendable, a foldable screen, which gains the motivation. And I think this is pretty awesome to see something like that. I mean, nowadays it's not so awesome anymore because we have 2020 and the first foldable smartphones are here. This talk was 8 years ago or something. So that was very new to the audience. Then I continue to tell them about my background, that I'm a chemistry educator. So that means my goal is something to do with education. And the goal for my thesis or for my project, PhD project, was to develop a DIY, a do-it-yourself OLED for the school, for school education. And I start always with a very nice comparison or analogy. And this is something which is always found in science slams, analogies. And the better the more vivid your analogy is, the better it is. So like here, I'm comparing my OLED to a sandwich. So what I'm telling the audience is you need to build an OLED. And I want them to understand how an OLED is built, because in the next step, I'm going to build an OLED myself. So that's why it is necessary that the audience know about the 3 main components of an OLED. These are 2 electrodes, and these are the sandwich slices, the bread. And in between, I'm putting a piece of cheese, a slice of cheese. So this is a cheese sandwich. And of course, I'm not using bread and cheese. I'm using for the 1 electrode and anode a transparent conductive glass. And in that case, I just tell them it is the same glass. Okay, so this is a picture of my wife. So this, you just find it on your smartphones, because when you swipe over the glass, it somehow registers the conductivity of your finger. And in the same way, this glass, it is the same material used here on the glass. As a semiconductor, I need an organic material which is semiconductive. And this is a special polymer which we use. And the third comparison is the second electrode, the cathode. In this case, we don't use a piece of glass or a metal. We have to use a liquid alloy consisting of gallium and indium. So these three components, there are also other components, but I neglected them. Yeah? So you have to focus on the main things, what is necessary for the audience to understand the next steps of your talk. So anything else, you can just skip, you can erase, they don't have to know it, okay? So why I'm telling you that these three components are important, because in the next phase of my talk, and this is the second part, I want to show you, just doing it here in my office room, how easy it is to build an OLED. So let me just switch to the camera. I'm just ending now my screencast. 1 second. And I hope you can now see my video in full screen. Can you see me again? Yeah, okay. So yes. I will use my office table. I've just put here a piece of wood because I'm gonna do an experiment now. And here I have these three components. This is the piece of glass. So this is one piece of my sandwich, one bread slice. Can you see it? Can you see it? Yeah, okay. This is my cheese. You see how I use the cheese, the bread slice now as terms, because if I say all the time, this is my semiconductor polymer, this is my transparent conductive anode, people maybe they will lose the attention. But if you say this is not the one slide of the bread and this is my cheese, which is of course the semiconductor, yeah. So sometimes you have to give the piece of information, and you have also to consider who is sitting in the audience, because Arnab already told. If they are laymen, then of course you need to stick to the sandwich. But if they are students in a science program, then of course you can say this is a semiconductor, an organic. So just for information, it is, as you can maybe see, it is a liquid, but the polymer itself is not liquid. It is a solid material, but we have to solve it in a solvent so that we can apply it on the glass in the next step. Okay, the third component was the alloy, the liquid alloy. It is in this syringe, and I can just push it out of the syringe when I need it. Okay, so these are the three components. So let's start with the experiment. So as you can see, I have an experiment in my talk. This is not always possible. It is possible in my case because what I'm doing in my professional business is exactly that, transferring sophisticated high-tech lab experiments into something students can do on their desks at the school, or at the school lab at least. So the next step is, how do I get this thin layer of this polymer on my glass? Because in the OLED, I need just a very, 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 very thin layer of this material. It has to be 100 nanometers. So it's not possible just to paint it using a brush or something. We have to use a technique which is called spin coating. So a spin coater is a machine which is rotating very fast, and you then spill the liquid onto the rotating glass, and it will spread all over your glass and just leave a thin layer, 100 nanometers layer of the material. The problem is that spin coaters, they cost like 3,000, 4,000 euros. It is not affordable for any school. So this is something I did not invent for the Science Slam. This is something we invented for school teaching. We use a cheap spin coater, and this is just a PC fan, a ventilator. It is less than €1. We attach it to a tile. As you can see, we have used it plenty of time because there's spills all over here. And this is just a double-sided tape. to keep the piece of glass in place. I am showing it to you. So I just attach this glass here on the vent, and then I see, okay, it can rotate freely. I'm just taking my battery because I have now to power up my PC fan. This is just a usual battery, 4.5 volts, and I have to connect the wires, and you will see as I connect it, it starts rotating, and I am taking just a cotton piece of plastic bottle, just as a splash protector. So now the next step, I will just take 0.1 milliliters of this polymer solution and inject it onto my glass. I'm actually not sure if this will work out today because the material, I could not prepare myself. So I hope it will work. So I'm just taking out 0.1 milliliters of this material. And okay, and you see here the first thing, okay, the syringe was blocked, but now it is free. Maybe you can see I have sucked up a little amount of the solution, and this is all we need. We just need a little bit of it, not so much. So, and now I hope you can see it. I'm just tilting my screen. So, and now I have to wait 10-15 seconds until the solvent is evaporated, and we can remove this now. And I think this should be enough. Turning off the fan. And now you see we got a very nice layer of the semiconductor onto this glass. Can you see it? That it's now all yellow? Okay. So I now remove this piece of sellotape. I forgot to tell you, I just, before I spin coated, I put a small piece of sellotape here because I don't want to cover the whole glass. I need one part of the glass uncoated. So that's why I just used a piece of sellotape. Okay, let's come to the end. Now I have put the cheese onto my sandwich. And as you can see, the method I did is a little bit different than your morning procedure. But let's face it, we got our cheese on our first slice of bread. And now I need my the top electrode. And I already told you we use Gallinstan, which is a liquid alloy. It is not like mercury because it is, you can use it in school experiments. It has no hazards, so you can use it. So I could just drop now the liquid on top of the super yellows. This is what the semiconductor is called. But the problem is it won't hold. It will just fall off the drop of the metal. So what we did is we invented a small piece of a plastic glass, or a glass piece it is, and we taped it with just two pieces of rubber. You can see it here. The black one is rubber, and this is copper leads, you can see. And what I'm doing now is I just giving some drops of Gallinstan onto this copper leads. You can see it. Maybe I try to zoom it to you. Maybe now you can see it better. So I put on each of this copper leads one drop of Gallinstan. What I now can do, I can just turn over my layer of semiconductor and put it onto top of my electrode. And what you are seeing now is I have a good contact between the semiconductor and the liquid alloy without destroying this very, very thin layer of semiconductor. So what I'm doing next is just use two paper clips, or just like this clips, and fix my device. So ready, my OLED is now ready to go. And for testing it, this is the last step. I use, just a second, a 9-volt battery. And I need to find my 2 more wires. It's not a problem. This is what I meant. You need to be spontaneous. I just take this wires from the spin coater and use them. So now I connect the battery And as I told you, I'm not sure if it will work, but let's see. And okay, now I'm turning off the light a little bit. Let's see. Let's connect. One end goes to the glass, and this is the reason why I needed to uncode one side of the glass, because I need to connect the conductive glass, and the other part goes to the one of the 3 copper leads. And if we are lucky, maybe we can just see light coming out of one of these 3 spots. Maybe you can just observe if you can see something. Okay, let me see first. Okay, what we can do, it is not working now. I have one more trick. I can just power it up a little bit. Let me check if I will be successful. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, now there's a little light, but I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen. I'm just trying to cover it and give you a... Can you see that one of the...
Yes, yes, great.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, we can see.
I'm trying it with the other one. Maybe this one is a little bit better, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I would have time to prepare a little bit more, then maybe we would get a better result, but I'm actually very relieved that we got a little bit light of it. So thank you. Thanks a lot. So let's come back to the slides. I need to share my screen again. Okay. Can you see my screen again? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Let's go back to the slides. Yeah. So this is the second part, the experiment, which, as you could see, takes a lot of time. So normally I talk very fast and I do these steps very fast so that I can have a little bit time left for the last part. The last part is about the theory. As Arnab said, only entertainment is not what we are searching for. We also want some information or education. That's why we call it edutainment or infotainment. So this is the part where I go into the theory of organic light emitting diodes. But of course, you have to shorten, you have to simplify, you have to come to the key message, what you want to transport. And I thought a lot about that. And at the end of the day, I decided to break it down to this concept, which I'm going to show you now. So the theoretical background about behind the OLED, I want to explain you why semiconducting polymer is able to conduct charges. So I explain you why a classical polymer is not able to conduct charges, because if you understand why something is not able to do something, maybe you can better understand why it is better as it is. It is the same principle that Arnab told you, how to do a bad talk. And I'm not showing you how to do a good talk, because I'm also not so happy with my talk right now, actually, but this is another thing. So let's get to the theoretical background. I'm not sure whether there are chemists here, but I started like this: to gain light out of electrical power device like a battery. So I want to transfer electrical energy into light. So I need a material which is able to conduct electrons and what we call holes. And if we are able that electrons and holes will meet in the material, we call it then a semiconductive material. Then we are able to gain light. And maybe Arnab will tell you later that it is not completely right what I'm telling here. But to break it down to the basic understanding, and if you have layman in front of you, then you can start like this. So we want to meet electron and holes in a material, which is a semiconductor, and then we can gain light. If you remember your chemistry lessons back in school, maybe you will remember that molecules which are constructed like this, saturated CC single bonds, are not able to transport charges because we have no free electrons or delocalized electrons. All electrons in here are used for single bonds and are not able to move. That's why classic polymers like polyethylene is not able to transport neither electrons nor holes. The molecules we use here are constructed like this. As you can see, here are double bond, single bond, double bond, single bond, all over the molecule, which is called a conjugated double bond system. And this is something which has delocalized or free electrons. And that's the reason why these materials, I show it to you. This is such a material which you can see here in the picture, is able to transport the charges. So I admit this kind of explanation is a little bit elaborate for someone who has less theoretical or chemical background. So I have another explanation, which is more for laymen. So this is how I explain it to someone who has really zero knowledge in science or chemistry. So let's imagine a classical polymer. The molecules, the atoms in the molecules are bound like this, like people who are holding hands and with both hands together, building a long chain. And this is what a polymer molecule is, a long chain of atoms. But the atoms use all their bonding arms, and that's why they are saturated. They are not able to transport charges. If I have no hands free, I'm not able to transport something. So this is the problem with classical polymers, like they are not able to conduct charges. The molecules which are used in the OLED device and which are inside the solvent are like this. So the people don't grab the other arm, but the leg of their neighbor. So if you grab the leg and you use only one arm to grab it, you have the other arm is free, right? So this is what we call sp set orbital, which is free, or which is only one electron. And these electrons are delocalized. These electrons are free. And in our picture here, we can say, yeah, the people have one arm free, and with this arm, they can conduct the charges. I think there was a small animation showing it, but it is not working here on that laptop, so sorry. So this is how I explain the theoretical background to the audience, depending on what kind of audience is sitting there. So actually, this is the end of my talk. Arnab also told, maybe you can use something interesting, something very special to make the audience more curious about your work. So what I can also, and this is the last slide of my lecture, we also thought about how can we turn upside down the functional principle of the OLED. So the OLED, what does it do? It takes electrical energy and transfers it into light or light energy. So if we go the other way around, turn it upside down, can you tell me a device, an electrical device, what can do the other way around? And this is something I actually ask the audience. And this is something, be interactive, include the audience into your show. And this is a possibility. So someone will say, okay, if I want to convert light into electricity, I need a photovoltaic cell. And then I said, yeah, exactly. And this is the nice thing about Prezi. Here I can actually turn it upside down. I can just move the presentation and make it upside down and tell them, yeah, we did exactly that. We took another polymer, and then if you build the same device using this material, you come to an organic photovoltaic cell. And this is the end of my talk. I show them, yeah, we were able to build a DIY organic solar cell, which is able to convert light into electrical power, which you can see here driving the fan. I hope, I'm not sure if everything is streamed very good to the webinar, but you can hopefully, I hope you did get the message. This is everything from my part, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Excellent, Amitabh. Thank you so much. I think great live performance. This was almost half a slam, which you did. And I think also given the situation that maybe it was the first time we did it on a webinar, a live experiment like this, I guess. It went really well and showed also you have to take a risk, right? For a slam, you have to have the guts to take the risk and improvise. And also, as you said, a good combination of showing your experiment, having a good introduction, and also then also, of course, explaining the science, your research also to the audience. I think I really enjoyed this. And Arnab, you have any comments on that, on Amitabh's?
No, I mean, I can only tell that the audience has missed Amitabh in action, because what is even better is when you do not have Prezi and you do not have PowerPoint, and you get people from the audience and you ask them to hold each other's leg, right? And you have all these people on stage holding one hand and one leg, and it's one big thing on stage, and that's really fun. So the fun is in a live audience. That's what we are missing out.
That's true, but I did this with Arnab at Pretty Theater, but we had, I think, 45 minutes there. But in 10 minutes, you can't. I mean, you can do it, but then you can show the experiment. I mean, you can show the experiment as a video. This is something you have to decide. You have to decide how you will distribute your 10 minutes. And you can do something like this, what Arnab told, because it's a lot of fun. But I never did it during the slam, actually.
We have one imminent question is like, what if the experiment cannot be done at home or on stage, like my research experiment? What should I do then?
I just told it. You can make a video of it, and don't make a video. Don't download a video from YouTube. I recommend doing a video yourself, showing your face and seeing, okay, it is himself or herself doing it. I also actually, what I would always recommend, if you do a live experiment as I did, have a backup. Like if I would have the time, I would have constructed an OLED beforehand, which I was sure that it is working. And then you can show the audience, look, that is how it should actually be. But as it is a live experiment, and this is the nature of science, we are not able to control all parameters. So this I would recommend. Or at least have a picture, like I had here in my talk, have a picture of your product or something, of your data. It's always possible to show a live experiment. Maybe sometimes you have data or something, but also there you can be creative how to transfer the message to the audience.
Very good. Thank you. This is a very good tip, I think, to have a backup or have already a recording which you can use. Amitabh, I know you also have to leave for another meeting, and we are late. We are behind our schedule due to the technical issues at the beginning. So thank you so much for coming in, and I think really great what you performed. Even if you said you were not prepared, I think still you did a fantastic presentation. And please keep on following the Science Slam, and we'll stay in touch with you also, keeping you updated. I would like to now ask Dr. Mohit Kumar Jolly, thanks, Amitabh. Are you staying or you have to go immediately?
I have to go now. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Bye, Amitabh. Thanks so much. And our next speaker, Mohit Kumar Jolly from the ISC Bangalore. Mohit is an assistant professor at the Center for Biosystems Science and Engineering, and he's also a science communicator with a lot of passion. He has led several outreach and science communication initiatives in India and in the United States. And now Mohit will talk to us a bit about that science communication should be not a one-way street, it should be a two-way communication, right, Mohit? So the mic is yours.
Fine, thank you so much, Samrat. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, absolutely visible.
In the full screen mode, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Samrat, for the kind introduction and the opportunity to participate in this webinar for Science Slam. So, as Amitabh and Arnab have already talked about the fundamentals of science communication and how to really get your message across to diverse audience, I really don't have much to say here. What I'll try to talk about is the other way around. That is, how do you try to take the feedback from the audience in a live setting during a talk, for instance, and then try to improvise, as again also Amitabh mentioned, to try to get your message in better in real time. So I am affiliated with the Center for Biosystem Science and Engineering at ISC, and more recently also with another new center that has started at ISC, Center for Society and Policy, given my interests in science communication. That is my email ID, and my Twitter handle is mkjollny15. Please feel free to reach out to me at any point of time. Anything you would like to discuss about Science Slam or science communication in general, I'd be more than happy to brainstorm. So, as I mentioned, I'm currently an active scientist as well as very passionate about science communication. In terms of what I do, in terms of research, I develop mathematical models to look at cancer biology. Now, why I'm bringing this up here is because, again, mathematics and biology are two disciplines which sort of very neatly tend to bifurcate in, of course, in our education system and various education systems across the world, where at the age of 16, people are asked to make a choice whether they want to be an engineer and choose maths and do JEE and AHPLE and other engineering entrance exams, or be a doctor and go the MBBS route. So what I try to do is to look at questions in the MBBS route through tools learned through the JEE route. So sort of trying to connect each other, and as you'll see in the later part through some anecdotes, through some stories that I'll be sharing how science communication can actually help you bridge this gap better and probably advance you on the path of interdisciplinary research as well. So it's not only for doing it for public, doing it as a duty, doing it for fun, but also how this can really be essential if you are working at the interface of multiple disciplines and so on. I have been passionate for science communication even before I realized that this is something which is going to be helpful for interdisciplinary research. So I started the Campus Science magazine at IIT Kanpur almost more than a decade ago, together with my friend Arvind Kothari at that point of time. And then I was involved in a couple of Science Slam-like competitions, 90-second thesis competitions, etc. at Rice University, where I was there as a PhD student. I won the iBiology Young Scientist Seminar Series, which is again basically a competition to get your research across different audience. And just before moving to India, I started the local chapter in Houston of ComSciCon, which is basically a set of conferences organized by graduate students for graduate students to help improve science communication and also to possibly seek professional opportunities in science communication, a theme that, of course, Priyanka will talk about later. So what I do now, after having been affiliated with CSP more actively, is I conduct workshops. CSP is the Center for Society and Policy. Conduct workshops for PhD students and postdocs on effective science communication. These are a couple of hour workshops, and I did a snapshot of it last year when I got to be associated with the Science Slam. Unfortunately, in the virtual world, it's sort of very difficult to do. I'll try to do it later anyway in the webinar. So one of the sort of themes I want to briefly talk about is that when we hear about the professional realm of communication that many of you as active scientists might be involved into, they seem extremely different from what one would think of as a public theme, right? So journal articles, you would think that writing a journal article is going to be extremely different as compared to writing a press release or writing a blog or participating in Science Slam. And what I'll try to convince you today is that's actually not the case. They are more similar than than they appear on the surface, because the common theme in both of them is communication, and communication is indeed a two-way street. So I did a very brief survey asking a couple of faculty members, what activities that we do in our daily academic life constitutes communication. And of course, if this were not a webinar, I would have asked all of you the same question. And the kinds of answers that I've gotten at multiple places, at multiple time points, across multiple institutes, in India and abroad, have been largely restricted to, saying group meetings or writing papers, giving talks to group members, giving talks at conferences, and again, writing abstracts and making posters and so on. And as you would see that these all activities pertain to only one side of communication, which is when one is sending out the message. But communication is indeed a two-way street. If you think of the most common, say, English as a foreign language kind of exams, then they not only have writing and speaking, they also have reading and listening. Because unless you're able to read and listen in that language, you're not going to be able to communicate effectively. So if there is one message that I would like to leave you here with, it is that please start thinking about an active listening and reading the nonverbal cues given out by the audience and so on, for instance, during a talk, to be able to improve your communication right there. So as has been already pointed out, know your audience, what is the purpose of your communication, and try to get feedback from them. So often when, say, a talk goes bad or it doesn't have the a desired outcome or expected outcome or planned outcome, we often easily place the blame on the audience, saying that, well, they were not prepared, I did my best, I put in so much of effort. So of course that's easy to place blame on them, but my request to all of you is to start thinking that you as the speaker, as the sender of the message, to start to take this responsibility of a failure of communication. It's only when you integrate this deeply in your thought process that you will actually start thinking more carefully about the kind of feedback that you can get and making sure that your communication has been effective in general. So let me give you an example. So I talk to biologists and mathematicians, physicists, right? If I utter the word differentiation, it means completely different things to a biologist who would think of a stem cell differentiation versus a mathematician or anyone from an engineering discipline per se, who would immediately start thinking about this calculus here, right? So the same word can have different meaning to different people. Let me give you another example. If I utter the word translation to a molecular biologist, this can describe the process of converting RNAs to proteins based on the central dogma of molecular biology. To someone working in biomedical sciences, translation means the ability to take your research from bench, as in whatever you have found out in the lab, to be able to finally affect something in the clinic. So translation is the process of taking your research outside the lab to affect the clinic. And then, of course, translation, as say Google Translate would mean, or anyone else would mean, is also translating across different languages. So which one is the right meaning? Of course, all of them are right meanings. It's completely context dependent. Some other examples, mechanisms. So to a biologist, mechanisms means something very different than what it means to a mechanical engineer. And I didn't actually know this. I was speaking to a mechanical engineer, and one thing which you have to do in this setting is that you have to often keep changing the hats that you wear. So when I'm speaking to a physicist, I'm speaking more as a biologist, and vice versa in those scenarios. So I was speaking to a mechanical engineer, and I was continuously uttering the word mechanisms to reflect what is meant by this word in the context of biology. And this person was thoroughly confused. And after a while, this person pointed out, well, what mechanisms mean to a mechanical engineer? And I said, no. So again, very simple words that you would hear can have very different meanings to different people. So one needs to realize that. Similarly, there's other examples. One of my favorite examples comes to randomness, stochasticity, or noise. To a biologist, this means something completely different than what physicists. And again, once you start interacting with people across the disciplines, you'll see that there are many, many, many more terms. This is, of course, in no way an exhaustive list. So the idea of jargon, or the idea of terms that have very specific meaning, technical terms, are extremely useful as long as you are confident that the audience that you are interacting with have the same meaning of a word. They not only have heard of that word, but also understand the same thing. So when you utter the word differentiation, the same mental image that you have in your head a replica of that is actually created in that. If it's a different image, then again, you might not have as well used that word, because again, you are not on the same page with the audience. So realizing that this can happen and start beginning to take the responsibility that that you try to minimize such things is what I'm trying to emphasize about. And again, as Arnab already mentioned beautifully, everyone likes stories. So if you think about what is at the heart of a story, what is at the heart of an interesting story, what keeps the audience hooked? So again, going back to the example that Arnab was mentioning, you first arise interest, you tell about an event, and then the hope is that the audience is left with asking this question, what next after that? And that is when it comes to fulfilling the interest, right? So at the heart of an interesting story, and this is just one example, one very popular series, is a question, is always a question as to what is going to happen next. There's a conflict that has to be resolved. There, different people use it, different terms to describe that. But at the heart of an interesting story is a tussle, is an uncertainty, which is keeping the audience hooked to it, to know what happens next, and so on. So can we follow that structure to improve both the scientific, the professional scientific part of things, as well as the more public communication activities, right? So I would like to highlight that all the papers that you may have read or written already have this structure in there. So think of the abstract of a scientific paper, the introductory paragraph of a scientific paper. It usually has this structure in it. Oh well, this problem is important, and and there has been some extraordinary previous work that has been done, which we are going to build upon, etc., etc., etc. But this particular part, one specific thing which is crucial to understanding the entire big picture, is not understood. Therefore, I am going to try to address that. So you see that tension is already there. If this were not there, then you would not have had the opportunity to highlight what exactly your work is. So this is what is called an ABT structure, or and but therefore structure in sort of storytelling literature. And this again doesn't happen only in science. This is the common framework of any public communication, right? So I'll just leave this taken from a blog post, and I'll get to the author of the blog post in the next couple of slides. So this is something which is used by politicians also, any public communication, right? So think of the slogan, "Make America Great Again." Right? It got so popular. Now, what is the implicit meaning of this slogan? The implicit meaning, as highlighted by Randy Olson here, is that America used to be a great and mighty nation, so that's the and there, but we have slipped in the word. Therefore, it is time to make America great again. So again, you see that structure, it's not really said in so many words, but the use of the word again indicates that earlier there was this position of America being great, but now we have lost it, and therefore we need to regain. So we are programmed to understand stories. We are programmed to as human beings to think in that manner. So can we use this inherent programming that already exists in all of your audience to be able to frame your talks or any of your communication activity accordingly, so that it the reception is easier, more efficient, and so on. And again, you can replace this with any other slogan that you have heard of across different countries, across different cultures. Successful politicians, you'll see that they use these kinds of things very, very, very effectively in general. Now the question is, why doesn't it naturally come to one active scientist? So actually, it's not your fault. Let me tell you. People might be saying that, well, you're always so much into detail that you need to step out. So that's a part of the story. That's not the complete thing. So first of all, if you the most of the people that you interact with in a professional setting, be it as a teaching assistant or as an instructor or as a student in a classroom, be it people who come to your poster or attend a talk in a scientific conference, etc., they're already interested. you do not have the the extra work to be able to interest them, you're not forced to interest them. So again, at the heart of a story is arouse and fulfill, but what we keep doing is fulfill and fulfill, because we already receive audience who is interested. So all we need to do is just provide them information, right? I'm sure you all have seen such scenarios that you asked a simple question and the answer that you got from a teacher or a professor was just so long that you feel saying that why did I even ask the question, right? So that feedback loop is missing. People are they are not attuned to realizing the nonverbal cues and so on, and then how to incorporate that. So again, that's the setting sort of that we work in. And the other thing is that we consider the error of boredom is much larger than the error of accuracy. So if you have to give some approximate answer or under some assumptions, this is what will happen. So the way we are trained to highlight all the different assumptions, to highlight the limitations of the study, etc., so that you're not over sensationalizing it, makes us again more active to this idea, or more your antenna catches that idea that it has to be accurate, but somehow it becomes less receptive to the fact that if you're going to be extremely accurate, sometimes you might actually be boring people to death. So all these are coming from this fantastic book that I would recommend many of you to read. It's called Don't Be Such a Scientist, and this was written by Randy Olson, whose blog I shared on the previous page. So Randy was a tenured professor of marine biology at Harvard, and I think at the age of somewhere in his early 40s, he decided that he doesn't want to be in academia. He went to film school at that age, did a master's in film school, and then now he makes fantastic documentaries. So when he saw the world from getting out of that sort of ostrich scientific professional setup, he was able to see what exactly scientists are doing and how we can change that. So it's a beautiful book that he has written. Now, there are various science communication competitions that one can participate into, to hone these skills. Science Slam is clearly up here. Then Department of Science and Technology more recently has come up with this initiative for you. There's this excellent competition called the Flame Challenge, where every year there's a very simple question: what is sleep, what is light, something like that, and you have to submit entries which can be text entries or which can be video entries, and these are judged by a panel of kids who are between 8 years to 12 years, if I remember correctly. Because again, if you're really talking about exciting people for science, then kids already have that curiosity in one of the most unadulterated forms that can be harnessed into. So can you communicate these extremely basic concepts of science to them? So that's why they are the judge, and not some experts in science communication or so on. Then iBiology Young Scientist Series. This is particular to biology students in general. And then there's a Dance Your PhD contest. I'm not sure if it's active right now, but it used to be, at least at some point, where you have to communicate whatever you've done in your PhD in the form of a dance. So again, there are all different kinds of opportunities, all different formats, whichever you are most interested in, be it text, video, dance, etc., etc. There are all of these. So in the real world, what I would have liked to do is play some of these improvisation exercises. Unfortunately, we cannot do that in the webinar kind of a setup, but nonetheless, let me just walk you through the basic of this. So improvisation basically means your ability to react without having a prior plan. So all these exercises, what they do is that, and these are done in theater. So these are actually theater exercises, and the goal of these exercises is to generate such a kind of synergy among the different participants on the stage that that they collectively give out a message and these are made of bits of messages which are given by each one of them in response to what the other person is doing. So mirror exercise, what this does is that, let's say there are two people and you can play this at your home with just one other person, any of your friends or family members. So you be the person, and you ask someone else to be your mirror. Okay, so then the exercise is that you would be doing some movements, and your responsibility is that the person who's acting as your mirror image should be able to copy you with the least amount of delay. And this delay, so let's say, if I'm as person A, and someone on the other side is person B is acting as my mirror image. So if I'm doing this action, so the person B has to follow this action, and then if after that I start doing some other action, person B will take some time to register what new thing I did and follow me. Now, how can you minimize the delay? The delay can be minimized if your actions follow a logical thought process, right? Logical not to you, logical to the mirror image, because then this other person can anticipate what is going to come. So similarly, can you, the goal is that can we, while giving a talk, your audience should be the mirror, because again, you're trying to create the replica of what is in your head in there. So can you walk them through your talk, your work, your research in such a way that they're able to follow the maximum with the minimum amount of delay? So, these are some exercises in general. So again, in scientific professional kind of a setup, and this is from PhD comics, we don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to how easy the writing is, how lucid the writing is. And again, this was highlighted by Arnab here. So that's what I'm trying to sensitize you all towards. So again, why communicate to non-experts? As I mentioned, that of course there's this goal of inculcating scientific temper, their career options. But one of the things which I would like to highlight here is that, in fact, by doing this better, or trying or continuing to do this better, you can actually grow yourself and develop your own professional network. So for instance, right, PNAS, one of the top interdisciplinary journals, they ask every single author submitting a paper there to submit a 120-word statement also talking about their work, which is written at a level understandable to an undergraduate educated scientist outside their field of specialty. So of course, this is not used, to the best of my knowledge, to gauge, the relevance of a study or the novelty of a study or so on. But nonetheless, this is becoming an increasingly popular feature in various scientific journals. Think of a graphical abstract. What's if it's an opportunity to convey your work into a wider audience? So that is something which the journals are also getting extremely sensitive about in general. Okay, so I'll just end with these thoughts here. British novelist C.P. Snow had written a beautiful book in the 1950s called The Two Cultures. What it talks about is that, how sort of natural science, people practicing natural science and physics, mathematics, etc., and those much more on the literary end, including, say, the journalists, for instance, they follow very different processes. And there are these two cultures, and this idea is brought up in various science journalism training classes also. And what he said, that there exists a gulf of mutual incomprehension. So the way the scientists talk about their work, or the way the journalists talk about their work, or the science here, is completely antagonistic, or it follows completely opposite trends, not necessarily antagonistic. So, to a journalist, you have the headline, and then you go into details. To a scientist, you'll walk through the entire process and then finally come to the message. And that final message also have, a whole lots of ifs and buts and assumptions and approximations, etc., because you are trained to think of that way, right? So journalists follow, what is called as an inverted pyramid structure. So you have the main headline, India defeated South Africa by these many runs, and this led to, India entering the finals. You have the headlines there, right? The message is clearly there. And then the more details you need, the deeper you go into the article to sort of try to figure it out, which is clearly not the structure of a scientific article, right? So what I'm trying to do here is to sort of pitch that parallel, which was earlier drawn by C.P. Snow in the context of science and journalism, to talk about two disciplines. So these were beautiful articles which appeared in the journal Nature this year, which talked about, how, if you're a physicist, what are some tips that you can engage with biologists? And if you're a biologist, then what are some tips to engage with physicists? And why were these articles written? Because there is increasing number of interactions going on between biologists and physicists to solve some of the the most challenging and open questions in research in biology and so on. So people are realizing that they need training across disciplines to be able to solve this. But again, if you don't speak the language, then how do you do that? So that is what this article is about. So physics and biology, possibly may have this gulf of mutual incomprehension, but can this gulf be crossed? And the idea is yes, with effective communication, you should be able to do that. Let me share another quick story. So this is a snapshot of an article which was written in eLife, one of the leading biology journals. But before this article was written, I had the exact same experience. So I was working with a physicist and a clinician together during my postdoctoral fellowship. And of course, as you can realize, they speak very different languages and so on. So we had written a paper which was on mathematical modeling or theoretical modeling of some biological phenomena in the context of cancer metastasis, which is the process of how cancer cells spread from one organ to another, and it remains the major cause of cancer-related deaths. So we had made that model. That model had some predictions, some of which were experimentally validated by the experiments that were done in the lab of the clinician. He also had an active research lab doing experiments. He didn't only see patients, he has both these roles. So we went there and talked to him about these are the model predictions, this is the validation, and now that there is some bare minimum proof of principle validation, here is a list of future predictions or sort of other predictions for which we still don't have the capacity or ability to do those experiments, but nonetheless these are important model predictions which can be hopefully helpful later to actually elucidate what exactly the biological mechanism was working out. Now he said that these remaining part, whatever figures that you have in paper, these are not actually results, these are just predictions. So they should be moved into the discussion of the paper rather than the results section of the paper. And this is where my other advisor, who was a physicist, started his response by saying, I think we are having a disagreement with what is meant by results. So while in the experimental setting, results means that you have validated this, doing these experiments in these cells, and you're deleting this protein, overexpressing this protein, etc., etc., etc. In the sort of mathematical modeling world, results means that you have put together this set of equations and you're solving them, and these are the results you're getting. So those are also results. But again, the simplest words you can think of, results, mean something completely different to people. And then I was so happy that this article appeared in a biology journal, and with the shortest abstract that I have come across, the abstract is just yes. So that's a clear resounding answer here. So you can clearly see, and these are very recent articles. I think this was 3 years ago, if I remember correctly. So there is a lot of crosstalk that is going on between physics and biology, or different kinds of training people, and that again goes back to the bifurcation that we have at class 10. Fortunately or unfortunately, in the coming world, you will see many more people interacting and trying to learn each other's language, because that is how science is going to be. It's going to be much more interdisciplinary than what you have here. Right? So think of the COVID situation due to which we are having this webinar. So there are epidemiologists, there are healthcare workers, there are economists, there are policymakers, etc., 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 or people from all different walks of life trying to solve this problem together. Because when you're faced with a problem, then that problem does not tell you that you have to use what you learned in biology or what you learned in physics or whatever. We broke down this into different subjects. Not to say that these are completely different things which have no connection with each other, but just because at whatever age, it's just limitation of the human mind to be able to assimilate all these different things. So, but now as we are realizing more and more that that is good for an initial training, but as you get to solving cutting edge problems, that sitting in those silos is not really going to get you answers to the most important questions. And I would just like to highlight this beautiful article, I think, which was written jointly by Professor Gautam Menon and Professor Sandhya Kaushika, Rosa Menon is a physicist, and Rosa Koshika is a biologist, and they have been working together for a few years, looking into these questions from an interdisciplinary perspective. This appeared in India Bioscience, I think earlier last year, if I remember correctly. And they talk about how, while interacting with each other, trying to understand the problem, how they they overcame all the different problems that I was just talking about, and actually contributed to the understanding of that question in a way that none of them would have been able to do individually. So again, this interdisciplinary scenario itself is a SciComm challenge, because remember, in an interdisciplinary setting, if you're a biologist trying to speak to a mathematician or vice versa, you first have to arouse their interest. You are not going to be in the mode of fulfill and fulfill. So the responsibility of arising that interest does fall on your shoulders. That onus is upon you. That ball is in your court. The better you are able to do it, the better you will be to reach to people truly across disciplines and contribute to meaningful science advances as well, in addition to, of course, the fun parts of it, which were already talked about. With that, I would like to thank you so much for your attention, and I'm always reachable through Twitter, through email, and I'll be happy to take any other questions later as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohit. Very great presentation. You really summarized it very well. We need to create a story, how to create interest to the audience. A narrative has to be there, the story has to be there, the challenge of interdisciplinarity, which you also told us. And also, we fondly remember your last year's talk in Pune on stage with the Science Improv and the Zip Zap Zop game. I think that's still in Arnav and I have well memories of that. And unfortunately, we're not able to show it today. I hope the next science communication workshop will be again live at a physical place, and we'll have again an engaging audience together with you. So we'll go now to our last speaker, which is Priyanka Dasgupta. Priyanka has just recently graduated at a Master in Science Communication at the Imperial College in London. And she's also a winner of the Science Slam in 2017. And she's going to tell us now how passion or interest for science communication can lead to a professional career. Priyanka, mic is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, it was really great listening to all the wonderful talks. And because we've gone over time a bit, so I'll try to constrain my presentation to as short as possible. So as Samrat put it, that I am just finishing up my master's in science communication from Imperial, and I've been in science communication professionally for the last 3-4 years, perhaps, and I've done a lot of activities in and around science communication. So this is my attempt to share some of those experiences and some guidelines, perhaps. Can I just confirm if you're able to see my screen?
Yeah, but could you enlarge it?
Yeah. I'll just go to that. Perfect then. So as soon as this starts, before this starts, I'd just like to preface this with a quote that is not exactly mine, but which I have heard and that has helped me is, I know that a lot of people might be researchers who are trying to get into science communication. So here's something that I'll leave you with, which is a lot of the times what is stopping us from what we want to be is usually because we're too attached to what we used to be. And yeah, so I'll let that just sink in. Now, coming to my presentation, which is science communication as a career, this would be more of a focused presentation on people who are probably dipping their toes into science communication or want to make that jump into science communication as a career. So the three main things that I'll be covering over this time would be the scope and possibilities you can grow into. Then I'll briefly talk about what a portfolio is and why it's important. And lastly, I can't really tell you about all the jobs there are, but what I'll try to do is share the attitude with which you can go about to finding the right fit for you. So first off, the scope can be something in writing or editing. So this is the most common that you might have heard of, being in research or academia, that you could be writing in journals and papers. But you could also be writing for science magazines, say Nature or a Scientific Reporter or Nat Geo. So that's one field. Or you could be writing news stories for science papers. Then we have the projects and events. So this is a role where you could be organizing a lot of the projects or events for public engagement and outreach. You could be developing social media campaigns. You could be doing digital media promotions, especially because the best way to reach audiences right now, even without the pandemic forcing us to be in a lockdown and virtual world, is digital media, websites, Facebook, social media. It's a great way to reach and engage audiences. And so this could be a role of communications management. Then we come to creatives. Now, what I've realized that having these skills can be a big asset for you. Now, it could be audio and video editing. It could be illustrations and graphic designing. It could be design mockups, scams, mood boards, and style guides. So for those who don't know what mockups, scams, mood boards, or style guides might be, it's just like the rough work for the said classwork of illustrations and graphic designing. So you don't necessarily need to know these skills, the creative skills, but it definitely is a valued asset in a lot of science communication jobs that you might apply to once you've gotten into the field. And this will help you also transition, if you want to, into the more formal media roles of radio or TV. So think Discovery, think Nat Geo, think Netflix documentaries. Even besides the historic David Attenborough voice narrating the story, there's actually a huge team of researchers working on that documentary or working on that infographics, let's say. And this research team is responsible to gather all the information, to interview all the scientists perhaps, to fact check and to get the narrative, to get that story that will be put into the documentary. So those are roles that a lot of production houses will have for science communicators. Then even within that, you could be the person who's actually shooting the documentary or directing the documentary or writing the story for that documentary, which will still be a very valid role as a science communicator because you will be controlling the narrative. And lastly, there's policy and research. So some panelists already talked about this, and policy is perhaps one of the more satisfying traditional ways of affecting change. Now, it could be a very good way for people who've already been in research to then kind of facilitate more action towards the system, perhaps. But something to just bear in mind is in policy, sometimes what happens is it's good to have, you could be a science communicator in the sense that there is always a demand for researchers for policy papers or select committees in a similar way to the documentaries I mentioned. But the more advisory roles or the more chief scientific advisor to government or some roles like that will often be reserved for people who've already made it in academia, say already a project director or director of some institutes who are now hoping to transition into policy. So just bear that in mind. This is not to say that it is the rule always, but it's a definite trend. And on that, I would just like to mention that a lot of the times when you're applying for roles, so the scope can again differ based on which country you're in. In India, it is a very ripe time for you to jump into science communication because as the others also pointed out, people are realizing the value of science communication. And the pandemic has been a great eye-opener for a lot of people on what can happen when miscommunication or misinformation runs wild. So, so if we say if you want to try and launch yourself in Europe, the scope there is much higher only because the infrastructure is already there. So every academic institution, every organization will have a science communication unit. It's almost seen as an essential part. That's not to say that it's not there in India, but I'm just saying that you have a lot of opportunities to explore, and it does not need to be does not need to be limited to a particular country or continent. Having said that, now let's talk about portfolios. So this is one thing that you might be asked to prepare when you're showcasing yourself for different work opportunities. Let's call it the digital CV, digital resumes, let's say. So a lot of the times in India, at least when I was applying for jobs and the jobs that I got for science communication in India, I didn't really make a portfolio and it was not really needed. But this came in handy a lot when I had to apply for various institutions here in London and in other places. So what I'll do is I'll give you as a story, as the other panelists pointed out the importance of a story. So as a story, I'll give you the example of my scattered career as a science communicator. And here's that. So for a portfolio, the first few things you need are typical CV material, which is the educational qualifications, skills and strength, experience, latest roles, and work samples. Now, these 5 are the typified things that you do need. The last thing is possible contribution, which sometimes you do put on CVs, but if there's no space, this is a great way to make space for how you can actually contribute to the company you're applying to. Now, why a portfolio is necessary is it gives you a visual aid. It gives you a visual hook, and it's very handy for freelance projects. So say you're starting off and you want to write in many scientific magazines, and you're promoting yourself as a writer, and you have some articles. So these portfolios can help. You can just send a link to these portfolios along with your articles to whoever you're sending it to, so that they can have a look of what your strengths, what your qualifications, what your background is. So this definitely does help a lot in freelance work, either in writing, editing, or in video editing even. So for example, I've put on my qualifications. I had a science background, and now I have a science communication background as well. So then you do the normal steps of the skills and assets and strengths. I've jumped to a summary of what my major milestones have been. So this is just to highlight your assets. You don't, so the good thing about a portfolio is that you don't need to cover every success or defeat, or you don't have to go over your strengths and weaknesses as much. People know that you're going to be kind of making shit up when you're in interviews, but the things that you can be honest and affirmative about are the things that are your strengths. And the best thing to do it, best thing about doing it through a portfolio is that you get to control the narrative of your story. So what I've done here is I've briefly pointed out my milestones, which is how I started off writing. Then in December 2016, I got a chance to appear in Fame Lab India North, which I went on to win. And that's actually the first time in my master's first year, I became aware of something called science communication. And that's actually the first time that I realized, oh, we can do science communication as a career. And to discover something that late into one's career is not as much of a problem, just to say that. So after that, I got to know about other science communication opportunities, and I did I was a science communicator on Science Express for 2 months, which is basically a life-changing experience that I've been on. It was a DST MOEF project with the government of India, and it was basically a 16-coach long white train that called Science Express that took a trip across all of India, across all states, and it halted at 3 or 4 major cities of that state. So just to give you an example, for every day, it was in total a 7-month journey. I was there for 2 months for the south and west part of India. And just to give you an example, every day we would have at least 30,000 to 40,000 visitors a day. And on Mumbai, and in Mumbai especially, I think on 22nd July 2017, we did a world record of, no, not world record, but at least Limca Book of Records. We got 1.24 lakh visitors in a day, in one single day as visitors for that exhibit. But yeah, so that kind of let me become aware of the opportunities available. Then I heard of Euraxess Science Slam. I entered it, and that was another turning point in my life, because after winning that, I got the opportunity to go to Europe, which was the sponsored trip as the first prize. And there I sat down to talk with a lot of academic institutions, people in science communication, to learn actually what it would be like to do science communication as a career. From there, I actually got an internship at the Royal Zoological Society of Antwerp in Belgium, which I'll talk about later. And so in October, November 2018, I also came back to do some facilitation, some moderation for the Euraxess Science Slam 2018. And I was collaborating in the workshops and seminars. So it was, again, a really good learning experience. And then in November 2018, May 2019, I interviewed and got myself a job at the Vikram Sarabhai Community Science Center at Gujarat, which was a more formal role as a science communicator, doing workshops, projects, innovation hubs, seminars, practical games and stuff, a whole range of things within a lot of different cities within Gujarat. And then lastly, in August 2019, I got myself, it's the internship that I was talking about that I got because of Euraxess, was the Royal Zoological Society of Antwerp, Belgium internship in their science communication unit. Now, the next slide is just to show that so sometimes your experience can span on and on. So you can mix it up in different styles. So I'll not go over each and every one of these, but I'll just maybe perhaps show you that a pictorial representation helps spice things up. For example, on the right side, you can see I was the co-editor-in-chief of iScience while I've been here. It's a science magazine of Imperial College, but yeah, you can mix it up in different styles while it being neat and following the rules that Arnav showed earlier. And then I have the sample works. Now, the best thing about portfolio sample works is that you can fill it with links. So what I like to do is not present all of my work, but hyperlink some of my graphics or works to the actual article. So if I click on one of these, it will link me back to the more fuller article. So what I've done here is I've put an example of an infographic, I've put an example of a panel design, I've put an example of just a cartoon, and then I've lastly put an example of an event poster for social media. Now, you don't need to put all of your sample work. What you need to do is show an expanse of, or the range of what you could be doing. And then here are some articles. So the one thing that you will see right off the bat is that it looks nice. However, you can't read any of the subtext. The intention here is not for me to make everyone read this text. I just want them to read the heading. So that will give them an idea of what kind of stuff I've written about, because here I'm not actually reaching a wide public audience. I'm just reaching my employer. So and they're very short of time. So I just need them to get the heading, and I need something to look good. Now, the matter is what will actually matter in the end, but the images will definitely, something that is well produced and looks nice will definitely create the hook for them to then click on to the actual link that pulls up the entire article. And at the end, something could be, so something of this sort could be there, of the possible areas where I, as a candidate, can fit the exact needs of what you've advertised in your job description. So for example, what I did was I put on writing needs. I said, I can help you with your interviewing or researching and content development, communications, because I have these graphic design skills, I can also do podcasts and graphic designing and video editing. And the last thing that I can help with, because I have experience before, so I can help you with admin and brainstorming as well. So this would be the part where you actually pull up the job description on one side and you pull up your skills and you see which ones match, and then you kind of frame it better so you can actually reinforce that idea of you being a valuable asset to the hiring company. And now, lastly, I'll just come to finding the right fit. Similar to what I talked about in the last slide, are you a good fit? Now, there are a lot of opportunities out there, and if you go onto sites, if you Google something, you'll be lost in a sea of a lot of opportunities. So that goes to show that there are opportunities. It's just about wading through the sea of a lot of stuff and find out what's right for you. So you don't necessarily need to find the best job. You need to just find the best job for you. So the best thing is to get on all the lists. There are Sitecom lists. There are websites like the Euraxess website where you can actually Google, not Google, but you can search what opportunities are available. There are databases that can help you pull up the opportunities that are coming up in science communication. Now, it's not easy to find the right one. So the first thing you need to do is research, research, and research. You need to sign up to maybe 10 newsletters or 10 mailing lists. And then say after 1 month or 2 months, depending on your ability to wade through a lot of content, you'll realize which ones are the ones that are actually helping you, and then keep your focus on those. The second is now review the jobs. Now, for someone who's just stepping out into science communication, does not have too much experience of it, so you are definitely feeling a gravitation, you're gravitating towards a certain type of role. I would suggest don't think too much right off the bat about what and why you are being attracted towards a certain role. Just pick any role that you feel is nice. It might be because of the salary, it might be because of the fancy name of or job title. Just pick that, and after you've got those, work backwards. After you've got those fancy titles and the job descriptions, now look at the job descriptions and now look at the eligibility criteria that they're demanding and match it up to where you are right now. If you don't have experience and they're demanding that you have experience to be able to qualify to apply for that role, start writing to all the companies you think might be good and ask them for internships. So these are ways you can put yourself out there. If you see that they require graphic editing skills, there are a lot of resources, especially now with YouTube, Coursera, Udemy. Develop those skills, get yourself a certificate. And what this thing will do is not only just give you the skills, but it will show others that you have initiative, you have the desire to actually step out and not just daydream perhaps. And the last is to participate. I can't stress the importance of this, but even when you're trying to reach the world within your own home or within research and Google, what you need to do is step out of your bubble and see the world from others' perspective as well. And the only way to do that is if you put yourself out there for other people to perhaps judge. And that's something we're all afraid of. We're afraid of judgment. We're afraid that we'll come across as fools or novices or amateurs. Don't be afraid of that. Never be afraid to make a fool out of yourself if you're ready to learn from that experience. So go out there, participate in workshops, seminars, events, learn and teach yourself. And it's the best way to grow. And I think that's a very timely end of my presentation. Did the presentation end, or can you still see it?
Yeah.
Someone say. You can still see it. Okay. So it was, and the last thing would be that be on the lookout for research scholarships on fundings. So again, a lot of ways to do that, mainly through web portals or mailing lists. So that will give you an idea of what's out there and what you need to do because financial considerations are definitely something we all consider, at least I consider. So it's good to prepare yourself in that way as well. Just a small recap, I talked about the scope and possibilities. I talked about portfolio and how it is okay to kind of evolve within the workplace as well. Try to find yourself and find the right fit. And something that I want to leave you at last with is that read, keep an eye out for a lot of stuff and find inspirations from others' work. Not plagiarism, don't copy their things, but find inspirations. Inspirations can be the key thing to help motivate yourself through a journey when you're just starting out. And so, yeah, that was my presentation, and I'm open to questions if need be.
Priyanka, thank you so much. Very engaging, exciting presentation. The digital CV to create your portfolio. A very good ending slide. I think Arnab, you must be proud of Priyanka. This is
Learn
a kind
from the best. Learn from the
exactly.
best.
This is a PowerPoint presentation as it should be, ideally. Yeah, and you showed it, like, you know, this is really a growing profession, and there are a lot of opportunities also in India, and it's really something exciting to work with. And you showed it also with your own examples, how you entered into this field of science communication and participated also in different events. So guys, if you are want to follow in the footsteps of Priyanka, join the Euraxess Science Lab, like just dare it, you know, go out and send us a video. We're very happy to have a look at it, and maybe you will make it to the finals as well. So we have, I think, a couple of minutes only because we are over time for some questions if they are coming in. Otherwise, be assured we will send the recording of this webinar and the presentations of all the speakers to you by the beginning of next week. So you will have those, and also the contact details of our speakers, and I'm sure they will be happy to answer any specific questions you have to them. If there are questions right now, you have the chance. We have a few minutes for that. There's one question which I want to start with. I think this is something for all three of you who are with us still. Is science communication only about having a good and persuasive presentation, or is it more?
Could you
repeat that? Yeah, we didn't get you. Is it about having a good what?
Is it only about having a good and persuasive presentation? Is science communication about that, or is there something more to it?
Who wants to take that? I can start off with it, and you guys can jump in. So definitely, it's not just about presentation. The presentation should be used as a visual aid. The main communication is you are communicating, and communication, as people pointed out, is a two-way street. So it always depends on the speaker, and it depends on the audience you're speaking to. So irrespective of whether you're using a presentation, whether you're doing a dance, whether you're just speaking at a live event or using an experiment, it needs to be engaging. It needs to have a narrative. It needs for some transformation to happen both on the speaker's side and on the listener's side. So the listener can learn and then collaborate by asking some questions, or say, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, I do know that. Can you maybe expand on that? And then the presenter then actually builds on that. So it's a constructive movement towards the final aim of whatever the message you want to get across. Yeah, and it can be science slams, it can be presentations at lectures, it can be science communication through journals or articles or science documentaries. It could be you organizing some event, many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add one very different aspect. Yes, you know, being persuasive and all that is important, but at the heart of it, the science must also be correct. I mean, you know, what we are seeing especially right now, for example, during the COVID crisis, is that there are a lot of people making what I would call persuasive presentations on products which may completely be, unproven and maybe even potentially harmful. Or they may be making very persuasive presentations on, for example, a drug which is being tested, but it's not being tested in the proper way where it should be tested. So, given I think to be classified as a good presentation, your science has also got to be solid, and there is no escaping from that. I think that is the first and foremost thing, that whatever one is presenting, one has to be sure that it is, correct, ethically, you're okay to present things like this. The persuasion part comes as at the one shouldn't just become a persuasive presenter for any kind of.
Another question is, there's often after a talk, the audience has a question and the speaker cannot answer that immediately. How to get out of that? Like you mentioned, you should never say I don't know, but how to get out of that situation without losing your face?
So it could have many things, like I don't know the answer, but I will look it up, or I don't know, but let's talk about it later. We can discuss this outside. I don't really understand. Sometimes what happens is somebody asks you something and they are trying to ask and you don't understand exactly what they are looking for. So it's often better to have a one-on-one discussion later on outside or over email or whatever it is. Often, sometimes people ask you things which give you a very good idea for something which you may not have done, and maybe you should do it. So it's also good to acknowledge that, oh yes, that's actually something I never thought about, but now that you're saying it, that's really important. I'm going to go back and look at it. So I think it's good to honestly say. I think that when I said you say I don't know, but it's I don't know, but I don't just stop with an I don't know, because it's good to carry on the conversation with whoever is asking the question.
Yeah. And another question came in. What about, is it good to read from my slides during the presentation? Like, is it okay?
A strong no to that. Strong no. I mean, ideally, if you've practiced your talk a few times, you know what is there on your slide. Ideally, you do not have too much text on your slide, so there's no question of reading a lot. There'll be just a few points to sort of help you speak. So I don't see the necessity to read from a slide. I would like to emphasize that the slides I showed and how to give a bad talk are examples of what one should not be doing.
Yeah.
Examples of bad slides which should not be having a lot of text to read from.
Another question, are static slides better during online sessions?
Aesthetic.
Without animation.
Static. Like,
static.
Without animations, yes.
Animation,
in fact,
without animation.
Yes. I think it is better to actually. I know I didn't do it because I to be honest, I recycled your talk, but it is best to have separate slides which you just move into, or I would imagine the best thing to do is to do it as a PDF, which you can then present, because a PDF is much more low bandwidth and is much easier, displays better on all platforms. PowerPoint can, and whatever it is, whether it is PowerPoint, Keynote, etc., all these things. PDF is a much more platform independent thing, and it's easier. So I would just split up the thing into, if I have box A coming on this slide and later on a box B would have come, I'll just make two slides, one with only A and one with A and B, and make them 2 pages in PDF. The worst thing in animation for online presentation is stuff that flows in or comes out or something like that, because those will completely depend on how your bandwidth is at that time. And bandwidth always fluctuates, even in the best cases.
Yeah, that we know. Priyanka, there's a question. I think this is for you. Like, are there any masters in science communication in India? Are you aware of?
I think there's a course in science policy in IIT Bombay. I think there are a few science communication courses, but I'm not sure if there's a master's in science communication right now. I know that there are science communication courses being offered at least by some of the IITs, And then there is, I think, by other institutes who are offering it as a short-term certificate course. Masters, I honestly haven't looked into it, but again, I might be able to share some links if I find those.
Okay.
Europe, there are masters in science communication in Edinburgh and UK, especially, quite a few, and then you have quite a few in Germany. But yeah, so that's kind of the epicenter. There are one or two in America as well, but I think Europe is much better for much better as a learning center for science communication. It's yeah. So just there.
Mohit, the audience is asking, are there any recordings, links to your science improvisation exercises, the Miro one? Is there anything available we can share?
Not that I know of. I'll have to check. There's possibly there is one for the workshop I did at ICTS, but I'll have to check. If it's there, I'll share the link.
Maybe you have to produce some.
Sorry. No.
Maybe Mohit, you should produce some videos, some exercises.
Sure. I should try to.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just on adding to that, maybe if you can search like theater improv exercises on YouTube, there are a lot of mirror exercises or the Zip Zap Zop. I think you would be able to find examples of it.
I think the audience
I would also say that, I mean, you can just Google Zip Zap Zop or mirror exercises. These are standard things for drama training, dramatics things. So there are, I don't know if Mohits are online, but there are many of these examples.
Okay, my dears, we are reaching we're almost to the evening of the day, and it's weekend, and we have still some of the attendees are with us, and thank you so much for holding on. It has been a very interesting, exciting webinar, a very long webinar, of course, but I think that we had such a diverse lineup of speakers, and each of the speakers brought such unique contributions. And I would like to thank all of you, including also Amitabh, who left a bit earlier, for coming in and giving your insights into science communication. And we, of course, are looking forward to receiving now videos for the Science Slam. Please go on india.euraxess.org and read carefully how you can participate, and let's make science fun and accessible. We have, it's a very obscure and tragic times we are in right now, but some glimpses of fun should be there in science these days, right? So thanks a lot, Arnab, Mohit, and Priyanka for coming in, and wishing you all a very nice weekend, and goodbye.
Yeah. So if I may say one thing to all those who are attending, this is your chance. All you need to do is pick up your cell phone. We don't need much. This is not a high-tech thing. Just make a simple video of what you're doing in the lab and make it fun and submit it to Euraxess. Who knows? You might be one of the people pre-selected coming in. Okay. Yeah. So all the best. Good luck. And stay safe.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.